Hello Wargamers, it's me Callum from Tabletop Banter, and today I'm going to discuss a tactical idea that I had whilst I was revising for some of my economics exams. I just had a thought come to my mind over one of the things I was going over in statistics, or in the statistics side of my course, and it just really made me think, can I apply this to wargaming? And if I can, have other people done that already? Has it got a different name, etc, etc? So really I'm just looking at this principal statistical idea, and can I inject that into my wargaming tactics? Now, for anyone who's done remedial statistics, you'll probably understand what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I'll do my best to explain it in the simplest way I can. I'm not particularly amazing at it, but I kind of get it. So there's a theory called game theory, and in particular the prisoner's dilemma. So the prisoner's dilemma is where you have two prisoners. So this is the example anyway, two players, and in this example they're called prisoners. Now, if you take both prisoners that have committed a crime and you put them in separate interrogation rooms with the same police officer, and they are given the choice to deny or they can confess. Then there are a series of events that can happen. As there are two options, deny or confess, and two people, A and B, person A can deny, and if person B also denies, then they get no years in prison, which makes sense, right? Because then the police don't know. Now, if person A confesses and person B denies, then person A gets a reduced sentence, because there's that thing in law where if you are assisting in the arrest of or in the imprisonment of a person who did it with you, so if you basically dob them in, then you get a reduced sentence and they get the full sentence. So prisoner B would have 7 years, and obviously the reverse is the same if prisoner A chooses to deny and prisoner B chooses to confess. Finally, if they both confess, then they both get a 5-year sentence instead of 7, for example. So what you do as an individual in that situation is you try and reduce the risk and maximize the reward. So the reward being getting out of prison as soon as possible, the risk being spending a lot of time in prison. So what tends to happen is people think in their best interests, but you have to remember when you're making this decision, the other person has a choice to make too. So what I found when I was going through this a lot of the time is that people tend to confess because they get 3 or 5 years. They could have 0 or 10 or 7 or something, but instead they pick the safe bet of 3 or 5 because they don't want to end up in there for longer. And at the end of the day, they don't know what the person next door is going to say. So injecting this idea into wargaming, can you sit down and look at your opponent and say, if I move these things, what are they going to move, and how is that going to impact the risk and rewards that I take, and the decisions that I make and the decisions that they make? So, first of all, I'm going to just say this right now. This is not the way to win every game. This is not a core tactic, it's not your army plan, it's not your battle plan. It's just something to consider when you're playing the game, maybe. And if you already do, and it has a different name, then let me know, but this is just like looking into the psychology of it, I suppose. So let me just try and break it down into an example again, like before. If I have 2 rhinos with tactical squads in, and my opponent has 2 rhinos with tactical squads in, I have 2 choices. I can move up, I have 3 choices. I can move both up, one up, or sit back. And my opponent can do the same. Now, if I move both up, pile out, and try to remove their models, there is the reward of potentially removing 2 units in that turn, or a unit in that turn, and therefore neutering their counter. There is the risk that I completely fail and they get out and then blow me to pieces. Now, if the risk is worth the reward, then take that. But if you feel that it's touch and go, there's always another option. The other way you can do things is move 1 up. Now, obviously, there's a lot less reward. If you move 1 up, you might only remove 1 or half a unit, but you can only lose 1 unit. And if you both sit back, or if you sit back, then you cannot kill any of theirs. Now, obviously, your opponent has the same choices, so they have to decide, because let's not forget, they're a person like you are. They have emotions like you do. They have to decide the same thing, and what they do is going to be based on what you do. So the only difference between this and the prisoner's dilemma is it's not simultaneous. So you can't draw directly from it. But what you can say is, you can think ahead, what is my opponent going to do if, and then you fill in the 3 slots that you have come up with, the stay, half commit, or fully commit. And try to figure out which one has the best risk to reward ratio, such that you're getting something from it but you're not risking everything. Now, I know that that's a lot of thinking on the spot when you're playing a game, and I'm also aware that there is the principle of active and passive wargamers. So an active wargamer goes out there, takes control of the game. Now that everyone says, everyone on YouTube, all the recorded videos I've watched say be an active player. And to some extent I agree. Being an active player is a very good idea. It puts the ball in your court. You are controlling this. You know, the other person has to react. However, what I'm saying is consider that there is a way to win being passive. Now, it won't work every time. Like I said, it'll be much less regular than active. But if you're an active player, recognizing when to be passive could be the difference between winning or losing. For example, if your opponent is also an active player and is setting out that boundary, you know, you're used to being the alpha male, and your opponent gets down on that table and shows you what's what, then you'll crumble. Your battle plan won't work because they are running the game, and your plan is to run the game. So if you can't do that, it's best to be able to recognize how to react. So you look at their battle strategy. So if they come out all guns blazing turn 1, you say, okay, he's obviously all about risking for reward, and he is really trying to push this. So you say, how can I counter that using this theory of risk versus reward, using the prisoner's dilemma example? How can you use that in wargaming? So the way I've thought about this and how I would do it, if I had an opponent who is putting everything out there for risk, you try to maneuver your models such that the risks he is going to have to take become that much harder. Now that means things like using terrain. So he's rushed up turn 1. Let's say he's got, I don't know, a Land Raider with 10 Assault Marines in, because that's how I like it. I think that's kind of cool. So he drives up the Land Raider, he flats out first turn. Focus some energy into popping the Land Raider, sure. But what you have to think about is he's going to come out and he's just going to go for your heart of your army. So move that heart of your army into cover. Reduces the charge range by 2 inches. Makes the risk that much higher for the same reward. Equally, lessen the reward. Move the heart of your army away. Put in a blocking unit. A unit that is there to be killed. So there are these things you should consider when you're playing a game against someone who is very active. And this is where I think the prisoner's dilemma just filters in. Now, like I said, won't come into play every game. Probably won't come into play very often, especially if you're a very active player. However, even if you are an active player, you have to understand that there is going to be someone else out there who is also active. And they may be more alpha than you are. They may be more aggressive than you are on the table. So taking note and recognizing that you can still win if you're a passive player, you don't have to just be stubborn and bash heads, is something I think that's worth taking a look at. So if you already do this or anything, leave a comment below. Let me know. What do you think of this idea? Is this something you can see yourself using? Do you do it subconsciously anyway? And have I just put a name on it? Or is this something that is new to you and you think, you know, you might be using? Or is it complete rubbish? If you think I'm talking out of my bottom, then yeah, go ahead and say. I'm more than welcome for a bit of criticism on this kind of thing, because it's very, I don't know, up in the air. Like, it's not a hard tactic, it's quite a soft tactic. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment below, like I just said. It'd be really great to hear what you think about this. And thank you very much for watching. It's been me, Callum, from Tabletop Banter. Don't forget, have fun.